Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Today, Josh is stitching out circles and echoes in one of our house blocks. So let's get started. So just to get started, you want to explain how you've changed this design up a little bit?
Yeah, well, let's begin with the house here. I did every other line going around, and then we get to the window here. I don't want to break threads, so what I did was I simply just made this diagonal line here, went around, made the square, and then trowel stitched over here to get back out.
That's really cute. I like that variation. It kind of adds a little miter in there to that window. It's nice. And you've also changed up the roof. You've done every other row of those half circles too.
Yes.
Okay, that looks good. So you're going to knock out this circle path down here?
Yep, that's the plan. I'm going to go down through here and then finish up with the clouds up here, with the billowing smoke from the chimney.
Okay, so working on all those circles. And we actually did some practice. I showed Josh the design called Underwater Rocks, and so I stitched it out a few times.
You can tell Leah's right here, and you can tell, you know, when things kind of go off the rail. And mine are more Easter eggs, ovals than circles.
Well, it's fitting with the purple fabric, but at the same time, this, no matter how you stitch it, this is still a beautiful design, and it's a good way to make this pebbling a little easier. So that's what Josh is going to try and do. Basically use these lines as kind of a guideline or just an idea what to do, but buzz through these areas 2 or 3 times, really not intending to stay perfectly on the line, but instead just work through the area and fill it with texture very quickly.
Yes, and I'm going to surprise Leah here because I'm going to mix it up a little bit too.
Okay. You're going to skip a couple of them too?
Yeah, I have a plot planned right out here. I'll show you. And here, with these circles, essentially all you do is you just go over them
2 or 3 times.
A couple, 3 times, exactly.
And you're not trying to trowel stitch perfectly either.
And my goal here is to follow the path and hit ones in all different sizes, because I think that'll look really cool.
And the nice thing about this method, and I call this Underwater Rocks just because I think it looks like, you know, rocks when they're kind of in a stream, they kind of have that ripple-y effect on the edges.
The shimmering effect.
Yeah. And so this is so much faster because you're not having to obsess about perfection quite so much.
Exactly, and it actually looks better when you kind of go off a little bit.
Exactly.
It'll define the circle.
And rocks aren't perfectly, you know, any kind of perfect shape. They're not perfectly round. They're not perfectly oval. You know, they've got lumps and bumps and stuff, so it's perfectly fine if you stitch off the line in one of your passes. And the echo, you know, it's kind of like a combination between echoing and travel stitching. You're kind of not doing either of them. You're kind of doing something in between echoing and travel stitching, if that makes sense. But it definitely works to fill in the space and add that pretty texture. And it's also a lot faster too. That's why I love it. It's definitely a faster way of stitching the design.
Oh, absolutely. This, you can see I'm going to knock this out in about 3 to 5 minutes, and that's just cheating. But if I'd done it the original way, it'd be a huge mess.
It would also be very time consuming too.
Absolutely.
I like that you're only hitting a couple of them. I think that makes it look really interesting, almost like a chain of rocks.
Or like a bead necklace.
A beaded necklace. Very nice.
And now, go down here with this guy. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit here because I did want to hit one of the half circle shapes too. And then come out here, do this little one.
And your hands are getting pretty far apart, so if you have a stopping point, you might want to stop and reposition your hands. I know it's, once you get in the groove, it's kind of hard.
And you can see it, I'm getting to the edge, and that makes things ever so much harder. And I actually did not mean to do this one, but that's okay.
Whenever you readjust your hands, it oftentimes throws a wrench in whatever plans you had. Sometimes it's good to stop and just think about what you're doing again, and get back on track again. But it's looking good. No one would know that you didn't want to stitch it, since you're stitching, you know, kind of more of a random arrangement here, and you're not stitching every single one.
Okay. Now I'm going to travel stitch along the edge and finish with
those puffy clouds.
the clouds up here. I think this is a really cool block. I like the billowing smoke effect coming from the chimney. I just think that's really neat.
Thanks, I designed it myself. You know, it's kind of funny. Whenever we're looking at these designs and kind of playing them out, I will kind of sketch something out. And it's a combination of shapes. Sometimes something doesn't work. Like I think I originally had this block with a few other wiggles in the house area. You know, it's just different combinations of things. And it's just trial and error that kind of puts it all together and makes it work. But I really like this one too. This was honestly my favorite of all of the house blocks, just how it's quilted. I like the smoke effect. I like all those echoes.
Okay, I'm just thinking how I'm going to do this.
Kind of plan it out a little bit?
Yeah, okay, I see what I'm going to do. Do the figure eight action that works so well for me when I'm doing circles.
Okay, so you're kind of flowing down one side and then changing direction and kind of flowing down the opposite side.
Yes, and I'll come back around and complete.
And then you'll come back around and complete all of those edges. Interesting. And, you know, another variation, if you wanted to make this smoke, you know, also kind of hide mistakes, is you could buzz around it, just like we did with underwater rocks, kind of that mixture of echoing and travel stitching. You could buzz around in these circle shapes, the clouds, that would make them stand out more on your quilt. It would also hide any little tiny stitch offs of the line or any imperfections that you're seeing with the circles. There's always ways to hide mistakes. I say always add more fiber, always add more thread, add more stitching. If you're working with embellishments, you can add embellishments like buttons and stuff. There's ways of hiding things without having to pick up your seam ripper and rip anything out. I'd slow down just a little bit here because you're going pretty fast and that's a tricky spot to be quilting in.
That is easily the hardest thing, just controlling the pedal. I need close to being comfortable with the speed.
Being able to see that you're working into a tricky spot and slowing down before you kind of get into it.
It's about 10 times more sensitive than a car accelerator.
So that's it for this block. After we've stitched through all of it, how do you think about it? What do you think?
Oh, I really enjoyed this one. It's pretty. I really like the billowing smoke effect coming from the chimney. It makes it look like a child's drawing. It's just really nice.
No. Well, I really enjoyed designing it and putting these elements together, but if any particular part of it feels like a struggle for you to quilt, understand that you can change things up. You know, with the circles and the pebbling in the bottom of the block, you can swirl around several times, fill those in with spirals even, whatever you need to do to add more texture, which will hide minor mistakes. I really love that underwater rocks design. It's so much faster to stitch. It looks so much better on the quilt, and it is one of those things where you can just kind of almost close your eyes and stitch it and flow through the area and not have to think and concentrate and have such a struggle with it. Always remember that tip that I had in the video. You could always add more fiber, and that might be thread, that might be embellishments, whatever it is. You could always add something to your block and make it more yours, but then also hide those things that are making you uncomfortable. So my name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. You can pick up your copy of the pattern and learn how to piece and free mission quilt 42 beautiful blocks. Pick up your pattern at leahday.com. You can also find Spoonflower Cheater Cloth fabric, which is pre-printed. That's what Josh is working on now. It has all the lines printed for you, so you don't have to piece or mark your blocks. You can find that at spoonflower.com. Until next time,
let's go quilt.